Welcome to Life Campus, and thank you very much for joining me today on this 6th episode. And today I'm very excited to be joined by someone I've worked with in the past, and I've been following their work on LinkedIn, and they are now working as a life coach. So I'm hoping to sit down and have a conversation to understand more about what it means to be a coach, who needs coaching, what kind of support or help do we get from life coaches. So I will be asking all the silly questions so that you guys don't have to. So without wasting more time, welcome to Life Campus, Ed. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much.
It's been a while. How are things?
It's been a while. Things are good. It's taken a little while to get here, but I think we're in a good place now. So yeah, I'm feeling good about things.
Yeah, I like it. You're looking well.
Thank you. A lot longer hair since the last time you saw me.
Longer hair than I remember. But yeah, I like the look.
Thank you.
Now, listen, I know you're busy, and I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me today. I have been kind of stalking you a little bit on your LinkedIn profile, and I was interested in your journey. Obviously, I've worked with Ed before. We've all both worked in the higher education, so that's where I met Ed. And Ed took the brave step to leave higher education and went into life coaching, which is why I thought it would be a very good conversation to have with Ed to understand more about life coaching. This is an area that I myself don't have too much information about. It's an area where we can learn a lot, and anywhere we can find help, we can find support to improve ourselves, to invest in ourselves, in our personal development. Then I'm really interested in those areas. That's why I'm sitting down today with Ed. So Ed, you moved from higher education and you went into life coaching. So what I normally do before we go into anything, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell us what you do now, and we take it from there.
Sounds good. So I'm Ed. I work for my own company, Ed Taylor Coaching, and I basically do a bit of everything, depending. I do life coaching. I've got a big focus on ADHD coaching, and then involved in both of those things comes a lot of career coaching, business coaching, sex and relationship coaching, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, those are kind of the two main headers that I use, and it takes me into all kinds of work. So I've worked with all ages, from kind of small kids at the age of 7 all the way up. I've worked with individuals, couples, in workplaces, all of that kind of stuff. And just kind of helping people with whatever they need help with, basically.
Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of what I do in a nutshell without going on for too long.
Okay. No, that's fine. So let's go back in time. 12-year-old. When people were asking you what you wanted to be when you grow up, what was your answer?
A vet. It was always a vet. From the age of maybe about 2, I was saying I want to be a vet, and everyone else in my life was saying maybe work with people instead of animals, and I was like, no chance, not at all. And yeah, obviously things look very different now. I'm probably about as far away as you can get from being a vet, but I'm happy with where I'm at now. So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey to get here, I think.
Okay, so how do we move from being a vet to a life coach?
So my story with that is, I think I always wanted to be a vet. That was always my thing. And I kind of went through school deciding all of my choices based on that. So I was picking my GCSEs, I was picking my A-levels based on the fact that that's what I'd go. So a lot of the maths, a lot of the sciences, a lot of that kind of thing, they were never really what I loved. They just were what I needed to become a vet. It went kind of fine. I kind of posted through those and came out with B's mainly, so that was fine. And then A-levels came along, and I suddenly decided that being social was a lot more fun than revising and doing exams. And that's kind of where it all fell to pieces a little bit. So then I came out, and I think the joke I used to make at the time was my A-level results were my name twice. So I got 2 Ds and 2 Es, and that kind of ruined any prospect of me becoming a vet. I then went through clearing, went to uni to study film and creative writing, which was, again, completely out of the vet space. And I think at that point I realized that wasn't going to happen for me. And at that point I was thinking maybe I'd go into some kind of English or linguistics, something like that. And then uni happened, and I kind of just floated around in different jobs. I worked in a supermarket. I was a waiter. I worked with kind of summer camps for kids. stuff like that. And then basically after that, spent a couple of years not really knowing what I was doing, and then ended up in higher education. Did that for, I mean, how long? I think 5 years I was doing that for. And then as part of working in higher education, that then kind of pushed me down towards the studying coaching.
Yeah.
And I've just kind of ended up here now. So yeah, it was a mix of changing my mind, a mix of my choices forcing me
Yeah.
down a different
Yeah.
route. Yeah, so it
Yeah.
was a bit all over the place, but yeah, we're here
No,
now.
very interesting journey. But obviously, along the journey, you learn a lot of things. You learn a lot about yourself, and now you are in life coaching. What is life coaching? What does that mean?
I think a lot of people, the way to kind of start looking at it, I guess, I think therapy and counseling and things are something that people generally feel a little bit more comfortable or aware of at the moment. And
Mm,
in the ways that it works, it is quite similar. So life coaching is fairly similar in the sense that usually, the bare bones are that you would sit down with a coach, you would
yeah.
speak for 50 minutes, an hour, depending, and you would kind of go to them with what your goals are, what your struggles and kind of barriers are, where you want to be, what things look like at the moment. And the coach would then kind of, it's a partnership. So the coach would work with you and they would sit with you, offer you that kind of safe space, listening, understanding to
Yeah.
help kind of break down some of those barriers and move towards the goals that you've set basically.
Okay.
So a lot of the time, the easiest way to kind of explain it is counseling and therapy are more focused on the past and dealing with what has
Okay.
happened and what's come before. And
Yeah.
coaching is generally more focused on the future. So oftentimes it's recommended you would kind of do both at the same time, and one would help you cope and the next would facilitate the next steps. So
Next
that's
step.
kind
Yeah.
of what coaching is really. And then, obviously depending on which type of coaching you do, ADHD, career, life coaching, the way it works is slightly different, but
Mm,
mainly it's how do we get you towards those goals and how do we make you happier? How do we get you closer to the life you want, basically?
okay. And you touched a little bit on, I think, I don't know whether you call them specializations, where you go, is it life coaching, and then you can specialize in ADHD or sex and relationships and different areas. So how do you get to specialize? Is there any specific training into those areas, or you just learn on yourself or on your own? What's the process of getting specialized?
Yeah, it really it depends on A, the route you want to take, and B, kind of depends on how you want to go about it. So at the
Mm,
moment, in the UK especially, coaching isn't regulated. So anyone at any point can just say, I'm a coach, and that's
right.
fine.
Okay.
A lot of I think there is a slight shift and change in perspective going on at the moment that kind of qualifications and certifications and kind of, a bit of kind of educational backing is being pushed for a little bit more. And I think
Okay.
it's something that's worth looking for if you are going to go for coaching or something, look to see what their qualifications and things are. So the way that I did it specifically with the ADHD coaching, which I would say is my kind of main specialization. So I did a level 5 diploma in professional coaching, and that then kind of allowed me to set up as a coach, and that gave me all the
Okay.
bare bones of how it worked, client contracts and ethics and all of that kind of
Okay.
stuff. Once I'd done that and I was already kind of established as a life coach, as a professional coach, then I went and did a further qualification, which was a level 1 certificate in ADHD coaching. So that
Okay.
was kind of building upon the skills that I had learned already, but with more of the ADHD lens. Um, but then with the kind of the sex and relationship coaching that I do, I haven't got a specific sex and relationship coaching qualification. That
Okay.
one's built mainly on the original coaching qualification I got. And then I realized that basically everyone I spoke to, sex and relationships came up in some way.
Yeah.
More so the relationship side of things, with relationships with themselves, with their colleagues, with their families and partners and friends. And then you get into things like kind of confidence building and communication and stuff. So that kind of specialization has come far more from just there being a need for it and me just having at
Yeah.
this point loads of experience in helping people in that area. So it depends. It depends.
So obviously you chose to focus on ADHD. Is there any reason why you chose that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when I first got into coaching, I was going through the process of being diagnosed with ADHD myself. So at that point, I wasn't really thinking that I didn't even know that ADHD coaching was really a thing. And then when I got my diagnosis, I then started looking at what support was available because
Okay.
you kind of get handed your diagnosis and you're on your own. So I was kind of figuring out what I could do. And through that, I came across the UK government funding access to work. And
Yeah.
then they recommended that I get ADHD coaching. And then that started me down a whole journey of basically being involved in the world of ADHD coaching, meeting and becoming friends with ADHD coaches, going through the process myself and realizing just how helpful it is. And then through that kind of made me change slightly from just general life coaching to
Yeah.
like push more into the ADHD coaching. So yeah, it was mainly my own diagnosis and kind of seeing what a need there was for it and also just how helpful it is. I thought I could do that. I've got the coaching experience and now I've got the
Life experience.
confirmation that I have the
Right.
lived experience as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of just seemed like a natural fit really.
No, it does. I think everything you do, if you've got kind of real life experience of it, it just adds to what you are doing in life, and especially your understanding of what ADHD is and how you can support other people. I realized that we started just saying ADHD, and we just assuming that everyone knows what that stands for. Do you want to explain what that is? What is ADHD?
Of course. So ADHD stands for attention hyper. Hang on, no, it doesn't.
Yeah,
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There we go. I got it.
there we go. Okay.
Basically, what it is, without using the word disorder too much, it is a processing condition in the brain
Mm.
where the brain kind of processes stimulation and kind of stimulus differently. So there is lots of different research. There's a lot of it we still don't really understand, but basically, it is all to do with the way that your brain receives and kind of takes in dopamine,
Mhm.
the way that your brain responds to kind of stimulus as far as kind of sight and sound and that kind of thing, kind of sensory information. And it's also to do with things like executive function and emotional regulation, which I realize then opens up another door of saying, what are those things?
Father, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, just on that, specifically with the executive functioning, because I think that
Mm.
is something that is mostly, that's kind of one of the main things with ADHD. So I think a lot of people have the idea that ADHD is little boys running around and kicking teachers at school and throwing shit, just a very kind of like only boys and only kids.
Mm.
And we're completely past that now as far as our understanding that anyone at any stage in life can get it.
Mm.
With the executive functioning is basically executive functioning skills are a set of skills that help us engage with and kind of get through day-to-day life. So that might be things like problem solving, organization,
Mm.
emotional regulation, like working memory, that kind of thing. And
Okay.
those things generally you will find with most people with ADHD, those things are impaired basically. And so
Mm.
it makes day-to-day life harder in a number of ways depending on what type of ADHD you have and your own personal
Mm.
experience of it.
Okay. So looking back in terms of your journey through school, how was it for you? Was there anything different that you noticed, you kind of when you're looking back now, that you noticed that was different to other students around you?
For sure. I think it's a weird one because I think I remember a time really, really young on, I think I was about 7 years old. I heard someone mention ADHD and I thought, oh, that sounds like me. And I went home and I said it, I think I might have ADHD. And it was kind of a, no, you don't. You're just energetic. So I kind of from that point didn't think about it too much after that. But looking back now, when I look at myself in school, especially in kind of the later stages of school, where I was doing kind of exams and going into university and stuff like that, there were a lot of pointers that now show me that. So a lot of procrastinating, leaving things to
Mm.
the very last minute, a lot of kind of getting very like not really caring and feeling very like, yeah, this is all fine, but then really kind of getting upset about very certain things that I was not able to do for whatever reason, like,
Mm.
writing big long essays or something like that. A lot of kind of focus issues and stuff as well. My
Yeah.
reports at school would always say, you know, if only he would apply himself, or like he's so bright but he just doesn't commit
Doesn't
him,
matter.
all of those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So I think I can see now looking back, a lot of that was just undiagnosed ADHD in the
Mm.
sense that I was very capable and very bright, but just wasn't able to kind of apply that to anything kind of real life, and was very, I think I was very able to just kind of coast through, which is a great privilege in a lot of ways, obviously. But I think there was a lot of times where I didn't really put in much work, which isn't a great thing to say looking back.
Mm.
But I didn't really put in much work. I didn't really revise for exams. I didn't really, and it just kind of was generally fine. And I think a lot of that, like blase, just is
Ethical,
fine. I
lucky.
think a lot of that is the ADHD coming in, because I think
Mm.
back to the executive functioning, a lot of it is to do with kind of impulsivity and not really future planning and stuff like that. So I think I was, oh, I'm fine in the moment, and I was never really thinking long term at all. So I think, yeah, that's a lot of the ways I can kind of see it looking back
Mm.
on myself now.
No, that's very interesting because you hear a lot of stories in schools of kids, and they end up being labeled as like they're trouble, they cause a lot of problems and stuff like that. But sometimes when you hear these stories from when people are older and they then get diagnosed and they look back at their journeys, realize like, oh yeah, it wasn't that I was was a terrible child. I just was dealing and processing my environment in a very different way to other people around me. So I think there's need for understanding. So in your own opinion, anyway, obviously we are not expecting, you're not an expert in that area in terms of like schools at the moment. What do you think in terms of the support that is in schools at the moment? Do you think it has improved from the time you were in your primary school to what it is now? Any idea of what it looks like at the moment?
For sure. I mean, obviously, without kind of working in schools, from what I'm kind of hearing and seeing around at the moment, I think it's definitely better than it was when kind of me and any older generations were at school. I mean, it's only in the last kind of 15 years or so that ADHD has even been diagnosed in adults. Before then, it was just seen as a kid's thing. So I think our understanding of ADHD has kind of come on
Mm.
massively, and our understanding of kind of wellness, mental health, neurodivergence generally, all of
Mhm.
these kind of things I think have moved in the right direction. So I think a lot of things that I'm seeing at the moment, there's a lot of kind of where kind of funding allows it and stuff. There are a lot of kind of send provisions and all of those kinds of things. So I think it's moving in the right direction, but I think
Mm.
there's still a lot of kind of we were talking at the beginning a little bit about misconceptions and things
Yeah,
that I think do kind of lead it down to, there's definitely still things we could do to make it a little bit better.
yeah.
But from what I'm seeing, it seems to be heading in roughly the right direction.
Oh, that's positive. That's good to hear. So, okay, moving on from school, university, going into the working world. How has it been for you? Okay, now you're working on your own. You're your own boss. So if you don't submit things on time, if you don't do things on time, no one is asking you. But when you were working, for example, when I met you, we were in the higher education sector together, and I remember walking into the office. I could hear you before I see you,
Mhm.
and I know Ed is here. How was it? Because for me, I saw someone who was very full of energy, very social, really happy, and just easy with life.
Mm.
But obviously, it might be very different for you because you were the one who was going through this and working with people around you, probably not understanding you the way you wanted to be understood. How was it for you?
It was a huge shock, I think, because when we met, that was my first time in an office environment. So before then,
Mhm.
as I said, I'd worked as a waiter in shops and in like all of these things that required a lot of energy, kind of like on your feet doing things. And I'd kind of worked with teenagers and all of that kind of stuff. So then coming into an office environment, a very kind of like professional corporate environment, was a
Mm.
huge shock. And I think you saw me start to kind of try and deal with that without the diagnosis. So I didn't
Yeah.
have all of the understanding I have now on how I work and what things kind of work for me and don't and things like that. So I was
Mm.
kind of figuring all of that out, kind of learning how to be in an office environment. And there was also so much um internally, just like a lack of understanding of going, why is this so hard for me? Why
Mm.
can't I, I'm
Mm.
looking around an office that everyone just sat there working.
Mm.
Why can't I do that? What
Mm.
it there was a lot of that. So I think whilst and it is absolutely true that the kind of very social, happy, everything's easy breezy,
Mm.
that kind of thing. that's a very outward thing. And I think a lot of that, without going, I guess, too much into the ADHD, was a lot of masking for me, a lot of
Mm,
kind of just like acting neurotypical
mm,
almost, but not being able to, clearly, because you notice straight away.
mm,
But then kind of going home after the day and completely crashing out, and not having any energy to do anything, and kind of weekends would be a write off and things. So I think there was that element of like, I just want to chat to everyone and it's really happy and things. But then the internal experience of that and the more private experience of that is, like you
mm,
say, completely the opposite. So I would be sat at my computer, kind of, I need to write an email or something. And my mind just blanks off. And my head fills with concrete. I just can't do it. And this is where the executive functioning come in. It just wasn't possible for me. And I know that, for anyone that doesn't kind of, I guess, have the experience of ADHD and things like
mm,
that, I know that sounds really, well, what do you mean you can't write an email? You just type
mm.
it and send it off.
Yeah.
But with kind of the understanding and I guess the acceptance of myself as well that I've got now, I realize now that without the right support in place, those things are near impossible. As soon as
Mm,
you have the right support in place, I can write emails now. I run my own business. I can do it. It was
mm.
just I was going about it in the wrong way and kind of expecting myself to work in a way that wasn't how my brain worked. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a very big learning experience for me, I think.
Yeah. What do you think will help maybe managers within these industries to understand employees with ADHD, or what should they look out for in individuals to give them maybe warning signs, say, maybe I might be dealing with someone who's got ADHD.
I think
Obviously,
it's
without generalizing things, because I know people are affected very differently. It's a spectrum.
for sure.
So some things
Yeah,
that will affect other individuals will show up in another individual very differently. But just in
mm,
general, as kind of some things to tips to for management to look out.
for sure. Well, I think there's two kind of initial approaches to this, and the one is kind of, I guess, the employee, how does the employee help the manager to help them? But then there's
Mm,
also the thing of how do management look for people generally, I guess.
mm,
Because rather than, I guess, going in and saying, oh, I'm looking up at these things, this person might have ADHD, I think it's more of a kind of a generalized approach is usually more helpful of
mm,
how do we empower and encourage each individual employee, regardless of if they're neurotypical, neurodivergent, disabled, or mental
mm,
health problems, whatever it is, if we can empower and kind of engage and support them in ways that mean that they're able to, I guess, kind of communicate what their needs are and figure out what
mm.
works for them, I think
Yeah.
that's probably going to be the most effective. And then it's kind of better generalized advice, because otherwise it's like look out for someone who's not,
Mm.
writing an email or something, and that we get into
Look
tricky
out for
territory
someone
there.
who's too
But
happy.
yeah. So I think it would be that. It would be more generally kind of recognizing signs that someone is struggling generally. So any kind of
Right.
changes in behavior, or any kind of the way that they work, or the amount they're able to put in, or the ways that they're speaking and engaging with the workplace, the world. If any of those start to change, just kind of check in and see, and give them that space to talk if they want. Especially, I know that with ADHD, a good experience for me was kind of semi-regular check-ins, as far as not micromanaging what have you been doing, but as
Yeah.
in like, how are you doing at the moment?
Okay.
And as
Yeah.
part of that conversation, maybe it comes in, about kind of productivity and things. But I think general check-in and just kind of asking the right open questions, and I guess becoming a bit of a coach yourself, really, in
Yeah.
saying, just asking those open questions of how are things, what's on your mind, what's
Mm.
working, what's not working, all of these kind of things. Then the other side of that, I said, was kind of the employee upwards,
Yeah.
which is it relies a little bit on the employee as an individual kind of asking these questions and figuring it out for themselves as well.
Mm.
Because it's really hard for you to support someone with ADHD if they don't know they have ADHD,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's like,
Yeah.
well, how do I know what will work, what won't? Where do I even start? So I think
Yeah.
as the employee, if they're noticing, or if there's anyone in work or in education or anything like that that notices they find things hard that maybe other people don't find hard, or they find that there's some areas of struggles, a lot
Mm.
of it can just start on Google. Why can't I write an email? And that'll probably at some
Look
point
out
come up with
for-
something like ADHD.
Yeah.
There's these questions you can start to ask, and kind of reflections you can start to do. And then once you as the individual have a bit of better idea, It's then you and management working together to kind of say, well, I think I need a bit more support. Here's what I think could work. Management saying, well, we can and we can't do that. And then it becomes a bit more of a collaborative thing.
Yeah.
So I think there's responsibility on both sides, but I think the advice always is just treat everyone like an individual and just be kind of open and kind of, able to kind of hear each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if that specifically answers your question, but I think
No,
more
it
generally
does.
that hopefully is helpful.
No, it does. It does. And when you're talking, I was thinking about, obviously there will be other people who are listening to this and they're in situations where they've never heard about ADHD before, and you kind of answered those questions in a way, in terms of like, if you are finding some things that other people are doing around you, they're doing it easily, and you feel like you're struggling with maybe attention, you're struggling with just focusing on one thing at a time, and little things. It's a starting point is maybe just start doing your research, asking questions, Google, like you said, and you see how it goes, and then look at what support is available around you. We obviously talked about your education. We talked about working in office environment or whatever kind of work you might be doing. So now what I want to go into is the main kind of misconceptions when it comes to ADHD and how people with ADHD work or relate to people.
There are so many. I think one of the ones that I think I hear a lot is as more people are kind of realizing that they have it and get diagnosed, you hear a lot of like, oh, everyone has ADHD, or that kind of thing. But actually, when we start to look at the number, like in the UK, for example, 5% of children have been diagnosed with ADHD, and it's about 3 or 4% of adults have been diagnosed. So when you hear things like everyone has it nowadays, it's just not true. And I think that is one thing, a misconception that kind of really takes away from the experience of people then that are being diagnosed with that. If they're being told that the things they're struggling with, oh, just normal, everyone feels that way, or like, it's just
Okay.
ADHD, everyone has that. It can be really kind of invalidating for that. So I think that's one big misconception. One of them earlier I mentioned as well is like ADHD is just for boys, that kind of thing. That's not true as well. We now know that everybody can get it, anyone of any age, race, gender, anything like that, anyone can get ADHD. So I think that's another one of them. As far as kind of, I guess, specific to the experience of ADHD, a lot of the times, because ADHD outwardly is very different to what ADHD is inwardly, I think people see it outwardly. Oh, I mentioned earlier, you can't write an email, just try harder. That's a big one, is kind of just try harder, or like, oh, have you tried just doing that, and then kind of giving very like simple advice. So I think one of the misconceptions is that it's a choice as well. But a lot of studies have shown that there's actually something physiologically different in the brain. So there's a lot of work that has been done at the moment on the prefrontal cortex and things like that, that shows that actually the way our brain works physiologically, chemically, is actually different. So it's not just a choice, a chosen behavior. It's not just sit down and focus more or anything like that. So I think that's a massive misconception as well.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how many. I could literally go on
There's
for
a
hours,
lot.
so please stop me with these. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
those are some of the kind of the main ones initially, especially. Yeah, but I think a
Okay.
lot of the ADHD experience is a very internal thing, which I think more and more people are starting to speak about now. So I think I'm not sure what the misconception would be, but that it is just an outwardly hyperactive, energetic thing where a lot of it, especially depending on which type of ADHD you're diagnosed with, a lot of it is a very, very internal experience as well. So that can make it look a lot different on the outside to what it actually feels like. So yeah, I think those would be the main ones I'll go with for now.
That's all
Yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about your coaching then. You obviously coach people with ADHD. How does that work? What is your focus? How do you help an individual? They come to you, they've got ADHD, they're probably struggling at school, or they're struggling at work. How do you support them?
That is a massive question. So I think ADHD coaching works very similarly to neurotypical or general life coaching, but it's through the kind of the lens of neurodivergence, and obviously in this case specifically ADHD. So it is kind of looking at the same things. So we still look at goals, we still look at struggles and barriers, and we still look at that kind of stuff, but we do it within the lens of the struggles that you may be experiencing with ADHD. Obviously, me as the coach has the kind of the lived experience and the understanding of ADHD. So that helps as far as the kind of the understanding, the safety, the lack of judgment, all of those kind of things that help kind of create a bit of a safe space. But we will really, really, really simplify things, because I think so much of the time we're all working to these goals that are massively like, overachieving and all of that kind
Yeah.
of thing. We've got pressure from family and from society and social media and workplace, all of this kind of thing. And I think so many times, especially when I'm working with people with ADHD, they come in and they're just feeling burnt out, a bit exhausted, a bit confused. So I think one of the first things we always do is just kind of break things down, slow things down, and look at what their goals are, if they have them, because that could be another future planning, that could be another struggle with ADHD.
Yeah.
But we'll look at kind of what their struggles are at the moment and what
Mhm.
we can do about getting them to a place where they feel a little bit less overwhelmed.
Mhm.
From there, later on down the line, maybe we'll look at kind of goals and things like that and start to build them up. But a lot of the time, looking at that reality of what things are at the moment and
Mhm.
what can we do in this immediate moment. That's usually where we go. So a lot of that is kind of a lot of with ADHD, when we're talking about the executive functioning, a lot of that is even very, very kind of the basic things like making sure we're eating, drinking, sleeping, socializing, exercising. Those things are missing or are very kind of severely impaired a lot of the time. So we'll look at those and we'll be like, okay, well, let's get the basics in place. How can we do these? We may look at kind of like I said, the expectation and the pressure. How do we reduce some of that expectation? Because a lot of people, when especially if they've been kind of undiagnosed for a long time or if they've been masking for a long time, they're working towards goals or they're working towards expectations that may not be theirs, that may be way too pressured, all of that kind of thing. So a lot of the time we'll look at kind of reducing that as well and really breaking it down and just going, so why is that your goal? How achievable is that? Let's look at working that. So initially, especially, it's looking at those real basics of like, let's reduce things. Let's see where the baseline is, see where we're at,
Yeah.
and then we'll build on there depending on their kind of individual thing. But it's all
Yeah.
within that lens of the understanding and the kind of the safety of
Mhm.
having the awareness of what
Yeah.
ADHD is, how it can affect people and that kind of thing.
So is it kind of helping the individual to stay in control of what they're trying to achieve, and just maybe looking at one step at a time, isn't it? Because I guess to me, it sounds like it might be an individual thinking, okay, I want to achieve this, but they are looking at the outcome, and it's massive to get there, and they're struggling with the concept of how do I get there? This is a big thing. What you do is to get them to step back and get them to take one step at a time towards the outcome. Is that what it
Yeah.
is?
Exactly right. I think especially when we're looking at ADHD, a lot of the advice that goes around generally is like, oh, set your 5-year plan and work towards that. And for the
Mm,
majority of people with ADHD, that's not going to work. We're not thinking that far ahead. One of the symptoms, I guess, with ADHD is kind of a different perspective on time. So looking
mm,
at kind of really long-term goals, it's
mm,
usually not going to work. So yeah,
mm,
absolutely breaking it down into the really small steps. And I think a lot of the times where I work with new clients, they're really surprised at how small we break it down into. It
mm,
can be, okay, so what do you need to do in the next 2 minutes to get you to this
mm,
5-year goal that you may have? Really small. But yeah, it's exactly that. Breaking it down into really tiny, manageable steps. Maybe setting some deadlines and things to kind of work with the nervous system that we're working with.
mhm.
And yeah, kind of start to build from there. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Okay. Now that is really helpful. Okay. I don't know if there's anything else that we have not touched regarding that would just help people to understand a little bit more. Obviously, there's a lot to learn, and I will encourage people to just go out there, do your own research. What I'll also do is to put some resources in the link below. Most of them will be free. You can just put time to it, read about it, understand it, and you never know what you find out. It might be you actually have got ADHD and you don't know, and you've been struggling with it. Whether you're young, whether you're old, you could be in your 50s. But if there are things that are coming to you now, you realize that, oh, maybe I should look into this. Maybe it's a sign that you should look into this. The resources will be there. The resources are free, It's just a matter of putting time to it and doing your research. And let's talk about accountability. I've never had a session with a life coach until about I think 2 weeks ago. Is it 2 weeks ago? I attended your session.
Yeah.
I think you call the Big Spoon. Can you
Mhm.
talk to me about the Big Spoon? What's behind that concept? What is it?
Okay. So essentially, I wanted to set up a service, or I wanted to set up a space where people could come along and find accountability to kind of get things done. So it's not aimed at specifically people with ADHD, but obviously that's a great
Mm.
help with kind of, motivation and things like that. The name Big Spoon came from the idea of something called spoon theory, which
Mm.
initially came from the world of chronic illness and has then been adopted by kind of the world of neurodivergent. And essentially, it's a way to explain the differing energy levels that people have.
Mm.
So you can imagine it that, let's say, every day you're allocated 10 spoons or something like that. And it may be that doing, calling the doctors might take you 3 spoons worth of energy, which means you're then
Mm.
working with 7. And it's a way to kind of help you understand your
Okay.
energy levels a little bit more. There's also another kind of theory, and this originally came from Mark Twain, I think, and it's called Eat the Frog. And it's the idea that if
Okay.
you've got something to do, if someone tasks you with eating a frog every day, get it out of the way, eat it first thing, because then the rest of your day is better because you don't have to eat a
It's
frog,
done
right?
now. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was kind of a mashup of the two of those. So the spoon theory of energy and the eat the frog, get it out of the way in the morning. I thought I'll combine those two, and I'll do big spoon. So whatever tasks you're putting off because they're going to take you a lot of energy will all come together, and we basically host it online, as you know, and we kind of all come together at the beginning of the hour. And for 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning, the people in the room share what they're going to get done. We then all go on kind of mute and stay on camera for some accountability for the rest of the session. And then 5 minutes towards the end, check in and see how we got on. And for some reason, the magic just works, and people come along and they just get things done. And yeah, so it's more widely known as body doubling. That's the kind of the
Oh,
thing
okay.
that you'll find if you Google it or anything like that. But yeah, essentially, you come together with other people, you all work on things, and for some reason, you just all get it done. So yeah, that's it really. So I do that kind of weekday mornings, Monday to Wednesday, and yeah, it works really well.
Yeah, to be fair, to be honest with you, when I said, "No, I'm gonna book on it," because I had seen you posting it on LinkedIn a few times, and people commenting on it, how they found it very useful and stuff like that. I thought, how useful can it be, really? People in the room, in the same kind of just connected online and working, how useful can it be? So I was more curious, and then I joined, as you know, and I was surprised. I really, really was surprised. I think for me, it was the idea that I came into a room with people and I said, "This is what I'm going to do in this hour. This is what I want to achieve in this hour." If I couldn't not do it, I just felt like I have to do it because I've told these guys that I'm going to do it, and I just put my head down and I went through it, and I've got a constant fight with my inbox. So I was working on my inbox and my emails never ending. So, but it was very different for me because it was the first time, and I would definitely do it again because I got a lot more done than I would normally. I would say I'm going to do this in the morning. I'm going to kind of put this task aside for the first hour to deal with this because I want it out of the way. Then, because subconsciously I think I don't want to do that task, at the moment there's something else that comes through, a phone call comes through, someone needs help, and I'll focus more on that and I forget on this. But this time I was, no, I said I'm going to do this, and everyone is waiting for me to give them a report at the end of what I've done. So I'm going to ignore these people, and every time there's always someone looking for me to get into other things. On that day, it happened, but I thought, no, I'm sticking to this, and I did, and I found it very useful. So that really good. I would encourage it, and I do. You do is a free session. The first one is a free session that you try out. Is that
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a free taster session, so people can kind of book. There's a link all over kind of LinkedIn and all of that kind of thing. But also, I don't know if my details will be anywhere, but if
I
people
will
just
put them
email
in
me
the,
or message
yeah.
me in any
Mm.
way, you can come along to a free session and try it out. But yeah, it's kind of like having a personal trainer, but for admin. I think is
Yeah.
one of those things. It's just having someone there that kind of just goes, well, you said you're going to do this, so obviously very kind of like chilled and relaxed.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm really glad that it was helpful, and it's helpful for me as well, because whilst I show up
Mm.
for other people, I also tell them what I'm going to be doing. So then I've got the same accountability. So yeah,
Yeah. And it's also the opportunity to connect with other people, isn't it? Because I connected
for
with other
sure.
people in there, which is a space that I wasn't expecting to connect with anyone else. Really, I thought I'm just gonna go there to do my work, but through those introductions, and I'm big on networking, because the
Mm.
more people you know, the more opportunities come your way just by talking to people in different areas, different sections, walks of life. You never know what will come your way just through that. So yeah, I encourage people to do networking wherever they can find the opportunity to do so. But what I'll do, I'll put some links to your website and your services in the discussion box below. I encourage you guys to just visit it, see what it is. Doesn't cost you anything. Just go for the first session and see how you think about it, and you take it from there. And you also do sex and relationship coaching.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that entail?
Yeah, I think it's quite a funny one. I think I've had people guess all kinds of things when they try and guess what sex and relationship coaching is. Essentially, I realized through speaking to a number of people that such a massive part of all of our lives
Mm,
is specifically the relationship part. And obviously, in some relationships, then you get into the sex part. But the relationships part, that kind of links with, kind of romantic relationships, family, friends, colleagues, all of these things. All of these relationships have a massive impact on us, on the way we view the world, on all of those things. And it all then links as a kind of, I guess, a final step to our relationship with ourselves. And I
mm,
think when I am looking at kind of offering sex and relationship coaching, the relationship coaching side of that is really looking at the way that we kind of interact with the other people in our lives, the
mm,
way that we kind of set and maintain boundaries for ourselves, the way that we communicate with other people, the way that other people communicate with us. And that then kind of all links into everything else that then comes into
mm,
coaching. A lot of the time when I'm working with people, the relationship that has kind of the biggest impact on them, because usually it's the person they spend the most time with, is
mm,
their intimate partner, romantic partner, whatever you kind of want to call it. And a lot of that then is kind of informing again how we see ourselves and the decisions we
mm,
make and all of that kind of thing. So the sex and relationship coaching is basically looking at that, is looking at the impact that our relationships have on other things in our life and the way that we kind of interact within those relationships as well. So we may
mm,
look at, I mean, there's such a wide variety, but we may look at kind of decisions that you want to make that, maybe your husband disagrees, so you find that hard. So we're talking about, okay, so, how do we communicate that and have healthy conversations and healthy conflicts and things? We look at
okay.
kind of, yeah, like with conflicts, we look at things like fight languages, we look at love languages, we look at all of those kinds of things. We might look at something that I do in kind of general coaching as well, but it's called a saboteur's assessment. So you answer a set of questions and it tells you in which ways you sabotage yourself. And that's really good at kind of understanding yourself and things. And then obviously you've got kind of the sex side of things as well. And that is, especially in these kind of intimate relationships, such a massive part of that. And that then
Yeah.
links to things like your own kind of self-worth and your confidence. And again, it's tied up with communication. So it all links. But basically that's a way where usually someone would come on their own. Because I know with kind of, relationship therapy or
Mm,
relationship counseling, couples may go for that. This one is more focused on the individual and kind of their experience of their relationships and kind of improving them from within almost and from their side of
okay.
things. So yeah, that
Yeah.
kind of a general overview of that.
That's really interesting because it sounds like to me it can help an individual if maybe you're struggling to find yourself within a relationship, you know, finding your voice as well within a relationship, like being confident enough to say the things that you like and you don't like within a relationship. But it's also about how you say it to the other person. So communication is very very important. That's one other thing I'm very big on in terms of people who are continually developing themselves. Communication is a big thing. You need to always be able to communicate, and always put in my description box, I put a lot of communication skills courses, which are totally free, which I just encourage people. All you need is your time, to dedicate your time to go through those, because you can tell throughout the conversations that we have on this podcast, communication is one of the things that comes up a lot, and it affects us in so many different areas of our lives. So the resources are free. Let's use them. Okay, Ed, is there anything else that you can tell someone who wants to get into coaching as a profession? Do you have any specific advice for them, or what kind of person will do well in this sector, or maybe what kind of person is not the right way to answer? Maybe what kind of characteristics do you need to have in order to be able to support other people as a life coach?
I think so. To the question of kind of what characteristics do you need, I think there needs to be a massive level of, well, there's loads of things, obviously. I think there's a massive level of kind of empathy that's needed to kind of, have that understanding, a massive level of patience, because you kind of need to leave yourself at the door. And it doesn't matter how quickly or how slowly things are progressing, or, if you go over the same things over again, it's not about you. And I think that's the main characteristic there, is to kind of remain focused on the client, because you don't want to be self-disclosing and telling them loads of things about you, because it's not your session, it's about them. So I think a lot of the kind of the characteristics that need to come along is a natural curiosity. I think that is possibly the biggest one, is you need to be really, really deeply curious about the person that you're coaching. Because if someone comes to you and says, I've got ADHD, and you don't ask the questions and you go, oh, so you struggle with this, it's probably not going to be helpful for them. So you need to be asking very, very open questions. You need to be asking and being curious about everything, and not assuming you know better than they do. Because when they're coming to you, they're the expert on them, and you're not. So I think having that natural curiosity, that natural patience, and having like a level of empathy and a level of kind of emotional maturity to keep yourself out of it. I think those would be the main things. And also the desire to help. I think that, that in a lot of these kind of helping professions, if you're just getting into it because, you might be able to make loads of money in it, or it's not for you, because you do need to sit with people through really hard times and really, good times. And there needs to be that. So I think those would be the kind of the main things I would say, the desire to help, and then those other things.
Okay. Thank you. Right. One last advice for someone, because I know there are a lot of people who've got ideas, big ideas. They want to break away from the 9 to 5 environment, and they want to do their own thing on their own, like set up their own businesses and things like that. Do you have any advice? Because for someone who has done it and you established yourself outside the 9 to 5 and you're doing your own thing now, do you have any advice for anyone in that situation?
For sure. I think that the biggest thing that I've realized kind of allowed me the opportunity to do it was obviously my qualifications and things, which is 100 ways you can do those. But as far as getting started, if someone's listening to this and they want to get started today, if they know something that they're interested in, if they know there's an area they want to go in, just start making yourself visible. Start talking to people about whatever it is that you're interested in. Maybe get yourself on social media, LinkedIn, especially for the more professional side of things. If you can get on there today and just start talking about the things you know about or that you're interested in, it starts to create you as a bit of a voice in that area. You can start to network with people. And, like you were saying earlier, as soon as you start to network, opportunities will come your way. You kind of never know. So I think the biggest advice now would be start today by just becoming visible, becoming someone that people associate with that thing. So, I like to think that now people think of me and they think of coaching, or they think of ADHD, or they think of big spoons, because I've just kind of shown up and just keep talking about it. So I think that would be the main advice, is just whatever it is that you're interested in, start talking about it. Everything else that's a bit more practical, you can figure out ways to do that, but you need to kind of make yourself seen, make yourself visible. And on that point, because I know a lot of people are scared of that, I never know how to say this more politely than no one cares as much as you do. So if you are going to put it out there. No one's thinking you're embarrassing or cringy or
Mm.
icky. And if they do, that's fine. There's a certain level of that to be expected. If you're
Yeah.
not cringing at what you're putting out there, you're doing it wrong, basically.
This-
You just need to do it. So that's a lot easier said than done. But I think that would have been really useful for me to hear, is like, you're
Yeah.
never going to get to a point where you feel super comfortable with it. Whenever I have to put a post up and I'm like selling something, or I'm saying, "Oh, remember, you can work with me," it always makes me feel cringy, but it's a part of it. So yeah, I think that would be the main advice.
Yeah. Now that's really something that's resonated with me a lot, because, for example, starting this has been a challenge for me, something that I wanted to do for years, actually. I thought about it, but just the idea of putting myself out there and exposing myself, it just held me back a lot, until I had someone saying that, listen, you have to be stronger than your biggest excuse. And my biggest excuse was like, I'm not good enough. I don't have anything to give to people. But in my heart, in the back of my head, I don't need to know anything. I can do this. And in the process of doing it, I'm learning. So if I sit down with someone like you, who is in a field that I don't know anything about, today I've got a lot of things that I've walked away with that I didn't know before I started talking to you. So that the process of just do it, just start one step at a time. And yeah, it's not easy, but it has to be done. Everything that we see around us was an idea at some point. But the difference is, some people get up and actually do something. And the moment you start doing things, it just kind of happens that things start just joining together somewhere, somehow. And my worry was like, who's going to come and sit down and talk to me? And now I've got people saying, oh, I know someone who would like to talk to you. I know someone who, be really good. And that things are just happening. So thank you very much for that. It makes a lot of sense. And hopefully someone out there will listen to this episode today, and they will get up and just start doing and working on whatever it is that you've been sitting on, thinking about, and putting aside for a long time. I used to say, there's a time I set up everything, and I looked at myself on the on the screen. I was like, no, my haircut is not looking good, and I closed everything. And that's an excuse. That is an excuse. It's just an avoiding
Absolutely. Yeah.
thing that as human being as human beings we go through. But no, thank you very much for that, Ed.
Of course.
I think I've taken enough of your time. I've enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully we'll come back. And I think what I would like to do at some point in the future is come back to explore more in terms about the sex and relationship, especially for young adults in settings like universities, and because there is a lot of relationships and heartbreaks and mistreatment that happens in those areas. And I think it will be good to just have a focused conversation in that, and how people can navigate their relationship around those areas. But yeah, thank you very much for your time today, Ed.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks for
appreciate
having
your
me.
time.
Yeah, it's been
Thank you
really,
very
really great
much.
to chat. Thanks so much.